We are in Rio State, Brazil, about 22 degrees south from the equator. We are in a vanilla plantation. Specifically, it's Vanilla planifolia. This is the same type that they grow in Madagascar. It's the famous like bourbon vanilla, let's say. So this is a plantation with 2,500 plants at this point, still expanding. The plants you see here are 2 years old, but they've been cut because we propagate through cuttings from these plants. So by 2 years old, they couldn't look more robust, but we harvest cuttings from them.
And how did you get involved in this in the first place?
I read an article on the BBC about vanilla farming, and since I was living in this location, I thought, wow, the climate's given. I like working with plants. Not a lot of people do this, so it's interesting. It's something new, and so after about a year thinking about it, I just started it. Oh, so the plants, obviously, right? You plant them down here in the soil. There's a little bit of soil and then pieces of coconut. Right here we have these pieces of coconut husk like this. You would plant the plant right here. We can plant one later, so you see how it's planted.
Yeah.
Then the plant would start going up, reaches the top, and you direct it backwards. Once it gets close to the ground like this, you want to do something. You want to lift it up above the ground. So the leaves shouldn't really touch the ground too much. The plant itself shouldn't get in too much contact with the ground, but it needs to be close enough so that the roots can find their way.
Like roots like this, you want this to be inside.
Correct.
I see.
That would be about it. And then these are the vines that are going up, right? Because the leaves are pointing downwards.
Yeah.
And these are the vines that are coming down.
And the down ones where the flower and the bean
And
comes
that's
out.
where it usually flowers.
I see. Is there any example?
So there's no flowers now because the flowering is over, but there would be some beans. Hold on, my hand is. So these are some better sized beans.
So these are technically, they are ready to be cured though, yeah?
No, you need them to. You need more months, many months. It's 9 months.
9 months. Okay.
Yes. Here, there's more. So after pollination, we hand pollinate each flower because we don't have the native bees, the bees that would be native to Mexico that would be pollinating. We hand pollinate each flower, and after pollination, the bean grows and matures, stays in the plant for 9 months. After 9 months,
this is about how many years? How many months?
So now it's December. These were pollinated most likely sometime around September. So these would be like 3-month-old beans. It's gonna stay here for until 9 months. Well, what's that, like May maybe, something like that. We see the color would change. From the tip of it would start yellowing out. When it gets light green to yellowish, then we harvest. Then within a week after harvest, we basically treat them with hot water. That's the phase 1 of the curing process. After the hot water treatment, it goes in a sweat box for about 36 hours. After the sweat box, you do about 3 weeks of sun curing, sun drying, but you have to continuously check, for the weight and the moisture to decide when the sun drying is enough.
Well, whatever you're doing, this is really potent. I mean, this smells.
Yeah, it smells good.
Yeah.
And after the second drying process is also done, you basically keep them bundled up in wax paper, in wooden boxes, in crates, and that you can do up to a year. The longer you do it, the better. You have to check every once in a while for mold. You have to massage the beans so the oils that are inside the beans come out to the surface, and coat the surface with an oil. The beans are shiny and they're supposed to be flexible like that. So it shouldn't be dried out and hard. Ideal is like 25 to 30% moisture remains when it's done. Okay. And really high quality beans develop vanillin crystals on the outside. That's a sign of good quality beans. Yep. Okay, cool. So investing in vanilla is a mid to long-term investment. The plants start only producing beans at a larger scale after the 5th year. Revenue starts coming in after 5-6 years, and profits later on, right? The investment, our major, expenses here were obviously buying the land, building the shade house structure, sourcing the plants, coconut mulch. We use huge amounts of that. It's relatively cheap, but because of the scale of it, it becomes a major expense. The shading, right? We use 80% or more shading on in the whole plantation. So that is a relatively large investment that you have to do in the upfront in the beginning. Obviously, maintenance and labor also become a large expense, because 5-6 years you're basically pay for labor, but you don't have any revenue.
And specifically, the day of pollination, you really require many people, right?
Correct. So pollination is also an expense, right? Each flower is hand pollinated. One flower gives a single bean. So pollination expense is also a large expense. And that happens after the 3rd or 4th year on, but in larger scale from the 5th year on. Our operation here, we are building in stages, so all of the plants are not maturing at the same time. That's because we wanted to develop experience as we were developing the plantation.
Mm-hmm.
So our expenses is spread out, but the whole investment becomes an even longer term investment.
So what is the yield per plant of green beans and dry beans?
The yield per plant would be about 1 kilo of green beans per plant. Sometimes it's a little more, sometimes it's a little less. It depends on the year, but it's wise to calculate with about 1 kilo of green beans per plant per year. And after processing the beans and going through the whole curing process, it goes down to about 1/5 of its weight. So you would get 250 grams at max of cured beans for each kilo of green beans. That would sell, that really varies, right? So, it can go down to $20-30 per kilo, but can also go up to $400-500 per kilo wholesale. And then a large part of the beans, I would say about half of the beans would be used to create vanilla extract, which is basically alcohol and vanilla. These would be beans that are smaller in size, that are not so aesthetically good looking, but they have the same qualities and as a food or as a spice. It would still have the same basically flavor, but they don't look so good. They are small, wrinkled, split. So you would produce vanilla extract out of these. We used the USDA basically guidelines to create our vanilla extract, and the first couple batches of vanilla extract that we already created was about 1.5 times the USDA requirements. With that, these smaller beans also produce a relatively good income. If not, they are hard to sell. So that would be the economics of it on the long run. Currently we have 2,500 plants on about 3,500 or 3,800 square meters of land. We're still expanding, so we expect to have another 500 plants on this lot. We would have about 300 plants. We hope to produce 3 tons of green vanilla at least per year. Mm-hmm. Right? The idea is to expand on the long run, is to expand further.
Okay. So you started with how many cuttings that we brought here originally?
First I got 100, and then I got 150, and that's it. 250
total, and
yeah.
Everything else was propagated from those initial plants.
Yeah. Limited.
So how many clippings can you make from just this length that we see here?
So we plant with five leaves.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
5-6 leaves.
Okay, wow.
The benefit of that, and I noticed it in the back. So Rogerio planted clippings about this big, 60-70 centimeters. Mm-hmm. Sometimes ideally the whole thing, just you put it down in 10-20 days, it starts rooting and sprouting perfect. But sometimes it rots, and sometimes it rots in the middle.
Mm.
But this part is good. The two ends are still good.
Yeah.
If you make it smaller, you have a much higher chance the whole thing just rots away.
I see. Mm-hmm.
So here the plant is able to like stop the rotting, usually at a point like this, and really just rots up to here, and here it dries up and it's perfectly fine.
Mm-hmm.
Now you can sprout them from a single leaf. You cut it here and here,
Mm-hmm.
and you put it in these trays with
Mm-hmm.
coconut mulch.
Okay.
I have it in my house in São Paulo,
Mm-hmm.
and it's gonna sprout. Takes much longer. The plants come out much weak, like thinner, but it works.
Yeah.
This is what we found was ideal. Like
Yeah.
grows quickly, like 3% loss.
Right.
Basically.
That's
That's
impressive.
Doing the loops, we're looping the plants.
Mm-hmm.
So it's rooted in here
Yeah.
to the soil, which we want, but we don't really want it to touch the soil that much.
Mm-hmm.
So it came down from up above on this side of the wood, and it's gonna come under the wood and go up on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And we're just going to tie it either to the other parts of the plant itself or to the piece of bamboo, and then that's it. That's the looping. If you don't loop the plant,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna tend to be up here,
Mm-hmm.
and it's gonna be tangled up, and you're not gonna have good access to the flowers.
Mm.
It's gonna be top heavy. Secondly, it's gonna have a harder time getting nutrients from the soil.
I see.
So you organize it. It's gonna be nice and organized. You're gonna have access to the vines.
Because technically, every time it loops down, you want a root also.
Yes.
The bottom part. I
Correct,
see.
correct. Once the plants hit the soil, the root changes.
Right.
Root hairs,
Yeah.
right? So you wanna take a piece of string and you wanna.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sometimes you don't need it. Sometimes you just do this. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And then once it's long enough, you
Yeah.
throw it over.
Zoltan was telling me that this is caused by a virus, the way that it curls like this. It's a little shinier and it's curly. So this one spreads through either tools that were not improperly used on a different viral plant and then cut the same one, or from bugs that bring it in. So this is bad. We have to throw this away. As well as this is another example, which is caused by fungal infection. But this one stopped. Apparently the plant beat it. And then other problems like this arise from little bugs and caterpillars that eat it. Zoltan just killed a small caterpillar that was nibbling on it. But besides that, oh, and then you could see an example here of a bit weaker color, a more paler shade of green, which is what happened when it snapped at the bottom. So it snapped at the bottom, and the only way this is getting fed right now is from the other aerial roots that it put out, which is why it's kind of losing these